Welcome to Speaking Concretely, the official podcast of the Cement Association of Canada. I'm your host, Adam Auer, President and CEO of the CAC. I'm very excited for today's episode as we get to hear directly from a concrete producer. Today's guest is Joel Westin, the owner of Bridgewater Ready Mix in Nova Scotia. We're going to get all into the details of what it's like owning and operating a concrete company in a small town in Atlantic Canada. But Bridgewater is also a leader in sustainability, and so I'm super excited to speak with Joel about the unique challenges faced by smaller producers with big sustainability goals. Welcome, Joel, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We should start just maybe by, contextualizing your business in the context of the cement and concrete business nationally. I mean, most folks might not appreciate that concrete producers are a pretty diverse mix in Canada. We have vertically integrated companies. These are cement producers for the most part. They're the members of the CAC who also have concrete divisions of their business. But about half of the concrete produced in Canada is made up by independent, smaller and medium-sized companies. And so I thought it would be a great place to start to ask you to tell us a little bit about Bridgewater Ready Mix and what it does and how it sort of fits into that ecosystem of concrete production in the country.
We're a small company in what I would describe as rural Nova Scotia. We are in close to Bridgewater, which is the economic hub for our region, a town which is slightly smaller than 10,000. And being an independent producer means that we have to form a lot of partnerships. We have very little resources in-house, so legal, HR, engineering, quality control, all of those parts would be outside of our own internal resources. So we become good at working together with others in collaboration and try to build from there.
What might someone, sitting in a big city somewhere else in Canada or North America not appreciate about the operation of a small ready mix operation in a community of that size of just 10,000 people? I mean, you already talked a little bit about sort of having to outsource some of the expertise that a larger company might have in-house, but what about the sort of nature of the projects that you take on, the relationship that you have with the community? I imagine it's quite an intimate relationship.
It is. There are, of course, bigger infrastructure type projects also in smaller communities. Highways need to be built, schools, hospitals, and so on. My company is mostly residential, and we do some commercial work, but we try to not take on too much, because one of the things that our customers really appreciate, of course, is the service level. That we know our customers and they know they can depend on us to be there when they need them. In construction, it's the same whether it's small projects or big projects. You can't control all the timing, so having partners that can show up when you need them is really valuable. And I think that our customers are definitely mindful of cost. I think everyone would be, but they're loyal. They would not change to another producer just because the price was lower. It's the service level they appreciate and the relationships that they build. Now, if there are bigger projects, like windmill projects, for instance, where a base could be up to 500, 600 cubic meters, we typically collaborate with other providers in our area to get enough trucks and plants to do a continuous pour of that nature. So we also view our competitors as sometimes as collaborators, just depending on the project that we're on.
But the just community relationship outside of the specific, business to business relationships, do the folks in Bridgewater have a connection to your company, either through sponsorships of events or through other kind of relationships?
We do. I'm a board member for the Bridgewater and Area Chamber of Commerce, and I meet a lot of the other people working in business through this. And it is a smaller community, so you know what projects are going and may need support. And we're a big donor to the Bridgewater exhibition, which is agricultural exhibition that is run once a year. So we are definitely involved in the community. It's hard to be anonymous in a small Canadian town. It's you have to be a member of the community and a contributing member.
One of the things that strikes me when you talk about the size of the community in which you operate, 10,000 people, we're hearing across the country about significant skilled labor shortages. And we hear it in communities large and small, all across Canada. And I wonder if you could, tell me a little bit about how that challenge kind of manifests itself in a more remote location. Like, do you have to take special measures to attract and retain employees to a community like Bridgewater?
I think that we probably have the same challenges as most when it comes to finding truck drivers, pump truck drivers. And we have resorted to do a lot of training on our own. We've also added recently an internship program so that we can take someone directly out of driving school and run them through our own internship program and still not get any penalties from the insurance company for having drivers with not enough experience. So we do training and try to work hard on bringing up internal resources, from truck drivers to pump truck operators. But it's not just the difficulty of hiring resources. We also see a transition in the business itself as we're working with low carbon concrete and mix optimization and sensors. The type of work is also changing, where a batch or dispatcher before could focus very much on just batching up the right concrete and get that out the door. Now there's data entry, entering quality control reports back, looking at optimization suggestions. So it's also becoming more involved when it comes to computers and even AI.
What's the process in terms of developing those relationships with cement producers? You mentioned an interest in low carbon cement, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about that as we go along. But what's the sort of process for finding the sort of mixes that meet the needs, sustainability or otherwise, for your particular operations? And are there specific issues that a smaller independent producer faces when dealing with cement producers and finding the material that they need?
Well, I think it's the same situation, I guess, anywhere where you're a small customer to a large company, that your voice may not always be the one first listened to. I don't think that that's in general. In specific, with our provider, which is St. Mary's Cement, I feel that we have a very strong, long-lasting relationship. Just similar to how I was talking about our customers, they don't necessarily change around a lot. You build loyalty over years of working together. We consider that in our supply chain as well. We don't change partners just because of small issues. We work long term, and we've gotten really good support from our cement provider. As far as the regular operations, getting deliveries scheduled, as far as support when we have issues with mix design and how the cement behaves in our concrete, getting access to experts, and also discussing, the sustainability journey and what they have coming down the pipeline. And Nova Scotia is such a small market that for St. Mary's, they only bring in one type of cement. So we were one of the early adopters on the general use limestone cement, and we're advocating for bringing that on sooner. But once St. Mary's switched over, they switched over for all their customers in the province. So I consider ourselves a lead user on that, but we were all changed at the same time simply because there's only room for one bulk supply of cement.
Tell me a little bit about the general use limestone cement. I mean, we've talked about it on this podcast before. It's one of the strategies of cement producers to decarbonize cement production in Canada and around the world. What does that mean from your perspective? How has the change, how has the change been so far? How do you see that migration to Portland limestone or general use limestone cement as kind of a stepping stone to some of the broader decarbonization goals that you and some others in the industry have?
Well, let's start with the positive. And from the EPDs, we can see that we get about a 7% reduction in the global warming potential from switching over to GUL. So it was attractive from that point of view. I think we learned a lot from the challenges we had with this change. Being in rural Nova Scotia, our contractors have learned their trades. It's been passed down from their fathers or the crew that they were on. So it's a very traditionally practiced, the concrete contractor trade. So we did not really get a lot of advance information about what changes needed to be done to accommodate, the changed properties of the limestone cement. So in turn, we did not tell our contractors that they should expect anything different. They should just keep doing what they were doing. But due to the higher limestone proportion and the finer blane of that being softer and ground finer, it was water starved, and there were adjustments that were needed in the mix designs and also in how the contractors worked with the product in the field. And we learned about it. We worked through it. We took some reputational losses over this. And I think one of the big lessons is for us, was that we need to de-risk decarbonization. We expect that the change cycle will be faster as we introduce new changes on the cement side, new changes on the ready-mix producer side to try to decarbonize. And we have to be mindful that the performance of our material is, first of all, number one, and decarbonization has to come as a second, and that we have to find ways of de-risking, our decarbonization journey, so we don't. The things that we work with are too important. Like we discussed before, bridges, hospitals, schools, these are structures that have to be depended on. The concrete has to be performing. And as a producer, then we have to put that first.
I think that's such an important message, because when we talk about sustainability, and particularly with policymakers, often they see it as a technological challenge. Now, manufacturers just need to adopt this technology or that practice. But in fact, when it comes to cement and concrete and the whole construction value chain, you really need a whole system of collaboration, as you've talked about, but also education on how to stay ahead of these changes to make sure that every person that's involved in cement or a concrete project understands, what modifications need to be made as we introduce lower and lower carbon material, and also introduce lower carbon design and other practices. So we're very much aligned at the Cement Association with that message, and working very hard on a program of engagement to make sure that happens, as you say, as these decarbonization strategies start to accelerate, which I also believe they will. And you mentioned in your answer EPDs, which we have talked about before on the podcast, but I'll remind listeners that EPDs that's an acronym for Environmental Product Declarations, or sort of like a nutrition label that identifies the environmental impacts of products. And Bridgewater was actually the first concrete producer in Nova Scotia to offer plant-specific third-party verified EPDs, which is the sort of highest level or most transparent level of EPDs that you can offer into the market. And I thought it would be interesting for our listeners to hear a little bit about, why you decided to go down that road. Also the process for compiling EPDs, getting them verified, and why you thought it was important for your company to do.
Good question. it was a bit of a process, and it needed to have some clear values to go ahead and do that. We're a small producer. We don't have too many resources. It's me, the general manager, and the batcher that needs to work on these things. And I guess the first thing we saw is that if we're about to commence a journey where we're going to decarbonize, what are we going to measure our advances against? We felt we needed a baseline, and the action plan that we're working against has a 2020 baseline, and we know what our mixed designs were in 2020. So we wanted to see where we were. So that was one thing. The other is that I had this idea that I wanted to produce a verifiable eco-smart concrete. And the EPDs, of course, help us do that as well. I can now show or verify that the concrete that I sell is EcoSmart 30 is 30% below Concrete Atlantic's industry-wide EPDs that the Concrete Association has put together. So I know that, but also, and more to your point there about the work of doing it, I was interested in, how they come together. Where did the numbers come from? Because there has been discussions in the industry, what is the comparability of one EPD versus another? And I could see that there are challenges, and I think it's something we need to start working with. One was, just to take one example, one was energy. So we use energy in our process, and what's the global warming potential for the energy that we use? Atlantic Canada has a fairly dirty energy. In Nova Scotia in particular, I think our coal-fired plants are still somewhat like 40% of the energy mix here. But I was intending to buy green renewable energy, which is also allowed to be transferred over the Nova Scotia Power's grid. But the EPDs could not account for either the poor global warming potential energy that we had in Atlantic Canada or the benefits from me switching to green, because the only standard values that was in the model was Northeast North America, which also included some states in the northern US, which gave us actually a better rating than Nova Scotia Power's current energy mix. So there is a lot to understanding, where the numbers come from, even if you have, like we do, third-party verified plant-specific EPDs. You do need to know where the numbers come from and what they're based on.
Do you see progress in that space? I know, at the association, and with our allied groups like the Concrete Council of Canada, which you're a participant as well. Do you see that those issues with data quality and granularity are being better understood and hopefully resolved?
I do see good progress on that in that area. And the only way to move forward is to ask the questions and work on the topic. And I do see good responsiveness both from Climate Earth, who we're using for our EPDs. When we want to dig deeper into the numbers and get more accurate numbers, they do support us and help us with that. And it's an important topic, and I think we're making progress, but there's more to be done.
I know that there's at least one project that you're working on, a modular housing project with the Housing Trust of Nova Scotia, that's going to be profiling your EPDs and other sustainability improvements. Is that becoming more typical in your region?
I would say that it's not really customer driven at this point. It's more my absolute need to do something about sustainability for my company's sake and to be prepared for what I believe is going to be a future larger demand for these type of products. And I also like to understand what's involved so we can be positioned. Being smaller, at least in my mind, you have to look and see what's coming around the bend, because we may so we can prepare. We can prepare. So not a strong demand right now. South Shore, Nova Scotia is it's a very nice place to live. It attracts some people from, say, Ontario region, and other parts of the country that build bigger homes here that may want to have a sustainability focus on that. So we do get requests, but the typical contractor or the typical job, not so much.
It's a market anticipation
Yes.
thing at this moment. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's fair to say that a lot of, especially smaller communities across Canada, are in the same boat. But, maybe one more question before I let you go on the sustainability journey, because I'm a big electric vehicle fan, and I don't drive a ready mix concrete truck, of course, but um, we wrote an article at the CAC about the Bridgewater's decarbonization goals, including purchasing electric vehicles. And you talked a little bit in that article about the struggles that you had in finding an electric mixer truck in the Canadian market. And I'm interested in this one because of obviously the decarbonization benefits, and I think especially for ready mix producers, it's an obvious place to look for further reductions, but also because the mixer truck, that roller drum on the back of a mixer truck is probably the most identifiable
It is.
part of our industry for most people. So it's a great, in a way, kind of way of communicating decarbonization goals to the public. But you found that it was not so easy yet. I wonder if you could give us a little bit of insight on that.
No, it wasn't so easy. And like I mentioned there, our interest in the EPDs was to get a baseline. And once we had a baseline, we started looking at levers for decarbonization. Of course, mixed design and raw materials being one, the plant and the process another. And the last one, of course, is the transportation of the finished concrete to the work site. That's a fairly big area, and we were wondering what could be done there. Electrification was coming on strong when personal vehicles, but what about heavy duty vehicles? I have to date not found any North American manufacturer that can make electric versions of ready-mix trucks or pump trucks. There are garbage trucks, medium-duty trucks. There are electric versions, but not for the heavy-duty trucks. I did make a field trip to Sweden and saw a Volvo truck used in Sweden. That was probably 2 years now, or a year and a half, and they had some good experience from that. It was a little challenging with the payload, but the economic life was the cost over the economic lifetime of the vehicle was cheaper, even though there was a higher initial cost. So they were positive towards it. I did buy a company vehicle that was electric, and we installed chargers for that at the plant. That has now been 3 years, and I'm ready to pass that on to the general manager and get another electric truck myself. And there's a lot of savings in those if you look at the fuel consumption for driving them versus charging them with electricity. But if you look at the transport area as a lever, as a whole, uh, we also looked into biofuels, which are unfortunately not available in any great volumes in Eastern Canada, even though I know we have experience within the industry further west. And I know that London Machinery, who makes the mixer drum, is looking at electric mixer drums, which could be a step towards reducing the emissions from the transport. There's a lot of idling on ready-mix trucks. Typically, you can't turn them off as the mixer drum has to move for the concrete not to set up. And there are idle reduction features on most modern heavy-duty trucks, but on ready-mix trucks, that feature is disabled so that we don't end up in a situation when you're pulled over and your truck mixer stops going. But with electric mixer drums, of course, you could turn the truck off and the mixer drum would keep going if you're at a job site or vehicle inspection has pulled you over for a 45-minute inspection, which happened last week. And they asked, the first thing they asked, could you please turn the vehicle off? I would if it wasn't a ready mix truck. I'm sorry, sir, it has to stay on. And so there are some advancements coming, but it seems slow on the electrification side. And I'll try to move forward where it's possible. There are electric loaders now that comes into the lever of plant and manufacturing, but even so, electric loaders are out now that I think will do a good job as far as loading the hoppers and doing what needs to be done in the yard.
So it sounds, in an economy that's looking to build a critical mineral supply chain and, battery and EV supply chain, there's a call to action right there, that there's an opportunity in the cement and concrete industry that has not yet been fulfilled in Canada.
Definitely. And I would say with, the situation as it is with trade and Canada's role in that, and our new government, that if the government would decide to introduce more electric vehicles across the department in the federal government, that in itself would probably be a driver to reduce cost and increase availability of electric vehicles across the board, also for private companies like ourselves. Government spend is not insignificant and can affect the availability and price points on vehicles like this.
Also true for low carbon concrete. As we advocate for governments to use some of that spending power to promote low carbon solutions offered by our industry and others as well. Maybe one last comment from you, Joel, on the future. Where do you see, from the perspective of Bridgewater Ready Mix, where do you see the industry evolving over the next decade?
I'd like to pick that up. You mentioned the work we're doing with the Housing Trust of Nova Scotia. So that is the regional case study for the National Low Carbon Concrete Guide. And we wanted to show that we could bring our EcoSmart 30 concrete to bear on that project. We will definitely show with the carbon accounting method that what the reductions are versus the Concrete Atlantic industry-wide EPDs, because we really want that method to more people to know about it and know that there is low carbon concrete to be purchased. Federal projects currently require that you show a 10% reduction if they're 5 million or above. And we want to show that that type of concrete is readily available right now. And it's just a matter of ordering it if you have a project like that. So where we're sitting at 30% reduction now, and as you know, Adam, it's easy for a ready mix producer to say I can get a 40% lower concrete or 50% lower by just adding SEMs. I want to find carbon reductions that are throughout the process, things that can be applied even if you have different strengths of concrete, but the gains are still there. Like you would if you had an electric loader, it wouldn't matter which concrete you were batching that day. There wouldn't be no emissions from the loader, period. And with that, we are embarked now on a next-gen manufacturing project together with Geotech Scientific out of Ottawa and Ultra Biota out of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. And we believe, with the support of St. Mary's Cement and what they have promised to do till 2030, we do believe the milestone of reducing our carbon footprint by 40% by 2030 to be attainable. We're not there yet, but we got 5 years to go, and I think there's enough things on our plate to work with that I feel that's quite within reach.
Joel, I really want to thank you for joining us today, and thank you also for your sustainability leadership. It's truly inspiring and is showing, I think, showing the way for a lot of folks on how we're going to get to our decarbonization objectives that we've set as an industry. So thank you again very much, and really appreciate the time that you spent with me today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to our audience for listening. And don't forget to subscribe and follow our podcast on your favorite platform. We hope to see you next time.